FoxFire, MommaFoxFire, everywhere on socials. So if you're looking for me on Twitter, which is now X, whatever you want to call it, is fine. YouTube, TikTok. I mean, every social that I can be on, I'm on as Momma FoxFire. So feel free to look me up anywhere. My podcast is called Even Tacos Fall Apart, and you can look that up. And would love to have you join the community if you're looking for a community to join. Besides Behind the Shades, obviously.
I did not pay her for that, but thank you for the plug. But definitely,
Absolutely.
please follow her. She's fantastic, everyone. So for me, I don't necessarily celebrate the holiday season, but one thing that I do love about the holiday season and the New Year's part of it is the spirit. Everyone is so friendly, right? There's people where if I was in the same room with them, I can be honest with you, right? We'd
Oh,
probably
yeah.
be at each other's throats. But during December and January, we love each other, right?
Yeah.
And take us through what this season means to you and to those close to you.
So I really love the holidays. I am not super religious anymore. I grew up Baptist and Church of Christ and like a mix of things. So, but I'm not really very religious anymore, but we do still celebrate Christmas. We do still, do all of these things around these different traditions that our family has. So it's mostly just about getting together and sharing food and sharing some joy. And that's really what holidays mean to me. Now, at the same time, my grandfather died yesterday, I believe. It was 4 years just yesterday. So he died around this time of year. He had a long battle with breast cancer, and men can get breast cancer too. I don't remember if we talked about that in particular before, but my grandfather died to breast cancer. So I have a tattoo on this arm. This is a handlebar mustache. He had a handlebar mustache for a lot of his life. And I've got some really good pictures of him with this handlebar mustache. But anytime anyone asks me about this tattoo, they get a whole earful on how men can get breast cancer too. And if you don't get yourself checked regularly, you notice anything going on in your kind of pec region that's a little odd, don't ignore it. So anyway, back to what we were talking. We were right at the top of this in our exclusive green room. we were talking about me going down rabbit holes, and that is what we're here for, right? So going back to holidays, this season is really just all about joy, but it can also be a time of reflection and sometimes a time of not joy. Some people lose family members around holidays, or they're reminded that those family members aren't there for holidays, or maybe you had something traumatic happen around a holiday or something like that. And it's okay to not enjoy the holidays, even if other people are enjoying them. You don't diminish their joy by not having joy yourself, and you don't have to fake it either. And you can be honest about it with the people that are around you. And then I think also, we're recording this on December 30th, right? So it's about to be New Year's, and everyone's talking about, oh, here's all the things they're posting their, what do they call it on Spotify? I don't use Spotify. What's the thing at the end that like summarizes all your stuff?
Oh, that's the end of the year wrap.
Yes, the wrap. There we go. So everyone's posting their life wrap, right, on Facebook. Look at all, I've had such a good year, and I had all these things that I have accomplished, and I did this and that, and I look back on this year and it's so wonderful. It's okay if all you did was survive. That's valid too. That's a huge accomplishment. And it's easy to get discouraged when you see people talk about, here's everything I've done, but it's okay to just survive too. You don't have to have some major accomplishment to have had a good life lived in the past year. So those are kind of like my feelings around the holidays are, yes, I love them. Yes, there's a lot of family and a lot of joy, but also respectfully, I recognize that a lot of people have a lot of big emotions around this time of year, and that's okay too.
I couldn't imagine if I was someone that suffered a loss during this time of year. My condolences to you and your family, is because the way I look at it is, at least here in Canada, from October to about the end of the year is all about family, right? You have
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, you have Remembrance Day, you have holiday season, then you start the new year, and the new year is supposed to be like new year, new you, and new relationships, right?
Yep.
And if you're someone that doesn't have anyone, if you're someone that, let's say you lost a family member,
Mhm.
let's say you had a divorce, let's say your relationship ended after the summer and you've been single this entire time, right? Or take it back 2, 3 years ago. Imagine when it was the lockdowns and you couldn't have anyone
Yeah.
over. And you look at it as you're in your home, which is supposed to be a place of love. You look to your left, you look to your right, and there's no one around you to share love with. There's no one around you to share what the commercials are telling you, what Facebook is telling you, what
Yeah.
Instagram is telling you, what TikTok is telling you. There's no one to dance to All I Want for Christmas from Mariah Carey. There's no one around you to share these things with. And there's this joke how Valentine's Day has been renamed Single Awareness for those who don't have someone.
Oh, I like that.
Right? Right. You like that, right? There's even a green
That's
ring
good.
where you can wear that shows that you're single. We'll talk offline about that. And
Okay.
and instead of a day signifying you are single, imagine a whole month
Mm.
showing that, hey, everyone around you has a family member or a family to celebrate with, and you're all alone. Your
Mhm.
success at that point doesn't matter. Your degree at that point doesn't matter. Hell, having all of your teeth at that point doesn't matter. So when you had your grandfather pass away and you had to reflect and understand that life is, for the most part, going to be different going forward,
Mhm.
what are some of the ways that you handled and perhaps even coped with that situation?
Yeah. So, like I said, he had a long battle with cancer. And at this point, he had been in the hospital for a really long time. And he had been having treatment and everything for several years. And so we'd been going through, okay, well, grandpa's going to do this treatment now. He's going to do this treatment now. So I feel like one, I don't want to say good thing about cancer, but one good thing about cancer is that most of the time you do have a long time to adjust. And the thing about my grandfather, especially that grandfather, was he was a preacher and he was also a funeral director and a mortician. And so we grew up talking about death very differently from a lot of people. We talked about death as oh, this community came and had a really cool celebration of life, or this community came and had a really somber, very religious, heavy service for this person. And it was so cool to see these differences. So we grew up, I mean, hell, I grew up with going to Sonic, getting a bag of burgers, going to the funeral home where my grandfather was working, and having a meal with him while he was preparing not while he was preparing a body, but like he would come out from the from the area and we would sit down and have a meal together at the funeral home. That was normal. And so we grew up very differently, thinking about death, talking about death, just generally being around death was not weird for us. And so at the end of his life, we had a lot of really cool conversations with him about, okay, well, what do you want to have happen when you die? And that's something that I think a lot of people don't wind up doing. And I'm kind of turning this into very much a death positivity spin now for some reason. But I think that it's really important to talk with your loved ones about what you want to have happen when you die, so that they don't have to make those decisions for you. Those are really hard things to go through. I've been, when my former mother-in-law passed away, she died to a form of blood cancer. And when she passed away, we didn't have a lot of those conversations with her. It was very different. And I wound up kind of leading the funeral planning and making those decisions because the family was so paralyzed about, we don't know what to do next. And I'm like, okay, fine. Like, here's the next thing to do. Here's the next person to call. But with my grandpa, it was really easy to say, what do you want to have as your celebration of life? What would you prefer in this case? What do you think is going to happen to you when you die in the next coming weeks, years, months, whatever it is? So we were able to have a lot of these really, first of all, philosophical conversations that were really cool. And then second of all, these really tangible things and kind of talk through them. So when he did pass, it was less of a shock and less of a traumatic experience and more of a, we've expected this, we've prepared for it. Of course, it was still very emotional, very sad. And everyone was very much reflecting on different things. And for a lot of us, it was just like, even though we'd had all this time to prepare, it was still this whoosh of, wow, he's gone, and that moment of, my life is different now. Even though I didn't see him every day or anything like that, it's different. It changes immensely when you lose someone who's really close to you. And that's a normal part of death and loss of life and grieving and everything, is that feeling. And so one of the things that we did as a family was to get together at my parents' house and to sit around and just talk about grandpa. We all pulled up pictures and told stories and all of that. And a lot of the time, at least here in Texas or Oklahoma or wherever, kind of this general area, you do a lot of that at the wake. Like our wakes here are generally kind of like we sit around and talk about people that passed or different stories of people that we hadn't seen. They're kind of family reunions. And so you sit around, you eat, you tell stories. And that's a big way that my family, and I don't mean just like my immediate family, but our whole family deals with death, is sitting around and talking about the person and talking about the stories. And for me personally, it was just a matter of kind of turning back to, okay, I'm feeling some really heavy emotions. I'm feeling really sad. What do I need to do right now? Do I need to sit and have a good cry? I cry all the time. I got a box of tissues right here. There's like 3 boxes of tissues in the living room in different areas. There's tissues in the kitchen. There's tissues. I just cry. I'm a crier. Okay. I just cry. So it's like, do I need to sit and have a little cry? Do I need to watch something happy? Do I need to watch a comedy show? Do I need to do a little gaming to really distance myself from reality for a little while? Do I need to read a book? Again, that's another like distancing technique that I rely on pretty heavily, is reading. And so it's just a real combination. And then lots of hugging my kids, so much hugging my kids. Like I hug them all the time anyway, but you would not believe how many times I would just like pull them in and hug them real quick. And they'd be like, Mom. So it's a huge combination of things when you lose someone, especially around the holidays. And we didn't do anything like, take a moment to specifically honor grandpa during any holidays or anything like that. But when he comes up in your mind and you bring him up around family and stuff, it's just a cool thing to be able to sit there and have those moments to share.
And I think that's the power of pictures. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
you can pull up a picture of your grandfather, or for those of you listening who have lost someone or maybe are missing someone, you can pull up a photo of them, right? It could be on your phone. It could be actually back in the 1900s. We actually had printed them off, and you can look at them and say, I remember this time.
1900s.
Well, we're all born in the 1900s, right? So it could be something along those lines. And the way I look at death is you go from the physical state,
Mm-hmm.
whereas you and I, let's say today, and you transition into a more spiritual and, let's say, mental and emotional state of mind, because you're remembered in people's memories,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in their tasks of their day-to-day activities. So for example, if I were to pass away, or if you were to pass away, since we're both in this industry, we would go from the physical to existing through our art, our podcasts, our interviews. That will live on, and that will still communicate who we were, who we are, what we stood for, what we represented. So when I coach people and I share that with them, it's my way of letting them know that you may not be able to see the person. You may not be able to physically touch the person, give them a hug, but they still exist as long as you want them to exist. Yeah. Right. And that's the beautiful thing about a memory. Once the memory is gone and once we no longer remember them, that's when they're truly lost. But we don't want to ever get to that point. Mm-hmm. So as we're looking towards entering the new year and helping people the new year, what are some goals or maybe some outlooks that you have to start us off for the new year?
Yeah, so that to me is a really good question, because I don't necessarily do the New Year's resolution thing. Like I don't really do that because it's such an arbitrary it's like, I get it. Lots of people see it as a turning and they see it as an opportunity to do these things, but I try to have constant goals. Like I don't ever not have a goal. And so I feel like I use this time more for reflection rather than forward looking, but this is a good moment to say, and this is true for anything, like you can use it for every turning of the season if you wanted to, but this is a good moment to say, all right, today is December 30th, 2023. If I take myself forward in 3 months and I'm looking at something in March, I take myself forward 6 months and I'm looking at something in March, April, May, and I'm looking at something in June, right? If I take myself forward another 6 months and I'm looking at something in December of next year, if I'm looking at December 30th, 2024, what do I want to say I've done this year? And this is an okay time to do that. You can do that anytime though. Like you don't have to reserve it for New Year's, but just kind of look forward and imagine what your life is going to be. What do you want to sit here in the same spot, but a year later and say, I've done this in the past year. And I would not focus on a goal that is something about your weight, unless you want to just say, I've been healthier. I would not focus on something that is necessarily out of your control, like subscriber numbers. That's a big thing that people are like, I want to have this many subscribers by then, or listeners for a podcast or something. I would not focus on something that you do not have control over. So if you're looking to do something like lose weight, focus on the things that you can do that are healthy and say, I want to, every day, I want to eat X number of vegetables. I just remembered that I have soup sitting right here that I never actually ate. So because I mentioned vegetables, and this is one of the ways that I've been getting more vegetables this year, is to have these soups that are like, this one says 35% of my daily vegetables. So you can do like V8 or whatever. I want to have X number of vegetables every day, or I want to do this one healthy habit every day, or X number of times a month. And if it's something like subscribers, well, I want to post a certain number of times a week, or I want to, make sure that I'm engaging in a community in a certain way consistently. And so picking things that are measurable, but that you also have control over is something that I think a lot of people miss. They're like, okay, measurable. Weight is measurable. Absolutely. You can't always control your weight. So I'll share. I haven't shared this one with anyone yet, so you're the only one that I'll share this with, and your listeners also, because I don't make a big deal about it. But I've lost 40 pounds this year, and it's not because I set a goal to lose 40 pounds. It just happened to work out like exactly 40 pounds lost this year since February. I didn't weigh myself before then, but and I didn't do that by saying I want to lose weight. I did that by saying I want to eat more vegetables. I want to make sure that I am setting a good example for my kids. I want to make sure that I am making healthy choices and not doing so much emotional eating. Because that was the big thing for me, was I'm like I said, I cry a lot. I'm a very emotional person. One of the ways that I soothe those emotions is to have crunchy things, popcorn, chips, that kind of stuff. So I set myself these, not really goals, but just like, I kind of put these things in place that said, I want to eat more. And now that's different too. I want to eat more vegetables, not less calories. I want to eat more healthy things, not fewer bad things. And so doing things like that really can have a big impact, even if you're not necessarily paying attention to it. Because I didn't pay attention to it until I was like, I wonder how that's going. And I weighed myself, right? So going great. And then if you have goals related to your kids where you're like, I want them to do well this year, or anything like that, you can do things like, I want to make sure that I'm checking in with my kids in a realistic way every day. My kids and I have a check-in every day, and we do a series of questions every day. And so I can tell from how they answer those questions, how they're doing that day and what I can do to better support them. So really, when you're looking at New Year's resolutions and goals and things like that, only do things that you can actually control, not the results. The results aren't what you're after. It's your actions throughout the year. I think that's a really, I know that I get up on these soapboxes and I'm like, these are things that work for me. If that doesn't work for you, then fuck it. Don't do it. Like you do it how it's going to work for you. This is just kind of what works for me. So I tend to put these into really generalization, like this should solve everything. I recognize that it's not going to work for everyone. And I am going to take a sip of my soup here.
I'm glad you mentioned the weights because that seems to be a big one. I know there's the gym goers, the gym bros and the gym sis out there who are like, oh, January 1st, the gyms are going to be so packed until,
Yeah.
well, in
Yeah.
Canada, until Valentine's Day, right? They won't get any machines and their whole schedule's thrown off. And for me, I started back probably, I changed my diet. So similar to you, I wanted to not eat less of something, eat more. So what I started to do is I started to incorporate um, more vegetables, like you mentioned. But I did it in a way that I want to do them as snacks,
Hmm.
right? So outside of the regular meal. So that way my meals were smaller, but I was still eating the same amount. I just spread
Yeah.
over the entire day. And I mentioned this to my friend. I made the joke. I was like, "Yeah, my summer body starts now, November 1st, for example, right?" He's like, "Oh, why don't you wait until January so it could be a New Year's resolution?" And then I asked
I
him,
wait.
"Well, exactly." Then I was like, "What am I going to do November and December? Just eat myself into something worse, into a food coma, and
Hmm.
then I'm just going to spring out January 1st?" I was like, "No, this is something I want to do, so let's do it now." And I think some people sometimes the last couple of months of every year they give up on the progress they've made because maybe
Hmm.
when they look at the scale, they see I'm supposed to be down 15 pounds, but I'm only down 10. Oh, I'll wait until January 1st. Or I was supposed to earn X amount of dollars, but I only earn this. So they're going to continue to stay in an unhappy job because they get discouraged.
Hmm.
I see a lot of people get demotivated during the holiday season because summertime, no matter where you are, is fun. It's hot. You can wear the clothes you want. The clothes are usually very flattering to your body type. But then when it starts to get a little bit colder, you begin to realize, okay, you're indoors more. You have more time to think. You have more time to wonder and maybe say, hey, I'm not where I am in my life. So to your point, you're reflective on the past, but that should be used in a way to create where you want to go in the future. But sometimes some people look at it, they're like, Mama Foxfire, I'm just not where I am. Life sucks. I'm still single. I don't have the type of friends I want. I still can't travel. It's so expensive.
Yeah.
All right. I haven't left my city in 2 years. What am I going to do? How would you help those people who are maybe going through those types of thoughts?
I mean, I get it. Those kinds of thoughts can be really hard and really challenging to handle. And I would first of all encourage people to get a therapist. Like I am not a therapist and I make that very clear. But if you're also looking to just kind of vent and be like, shit, this is not what I want for my life. You know, one of the things that I like to do is put things out there to the community and say, here's how I'm feeling. What would you say if this was a friend? You know, if this was a friend saying this to you, what would you say to them? And because I talk to myself and I'm like, I am single. Like I've dated this year. Uh I've dated men, I've dated women. It's much more fun to date women, but boy, do they want to move super fast. And I have realized every time it's gotten to a point where I was ready to not be in a relationship anymore, I'm like, am I happier with this person or am I happier by myself? And the answer so far has been I'm happier by myself and I'm okay with that. So you you kind of have to look at it and say, all right, oh, I'm still single. Oh, I'm still this, oh, I'm still that, or I'm not happy with this, or I'm not happy with that, or and then you can start in with that really negative self-talk and say, well, you're single because you're fat, you're single because you're not interesting, you're single because you're whatever. But if you were to say that, if I were to call up my friend and say, I'm single because I'm fat, right? She would say, shut the fuck up. You're single because you're happier. And that's fine. It's okay to be that way. You're single because you weren't willing to stay in a relationship that wasn't serving you. And that's okay. And, you know, you got to talk to yourself like you're a friend instead of like you're yourself. Does that make sense? Because I can talk to myself in the most shitty way possible. But if my friend calls me and says those same exact things, I'm going to tell her, oh, whoa, Oh, I did this with my grandma actually just the other day. So my grandma has dementia, and it's been a tough couple of months. I think part of it is the holiday season, part of it is the season in general, just it being dark all the time. And part of it may be that we lost my grandpa this time of year. I don't know that she recognizes and connects those two, but that could be part of it. Regardless, her dementia has caused her to have some really bad days lately. And there was one day where I was on the phone with her for hours, and I went over there and stayed over there for hours. And then when I went home, she called me like 10 o'clock at night, and she was still having a hard time. I was like, do you want me to come back over there? She was like, no, I don't want you to come over here. I just wanted to be on the phone. I was like, okay, that's fine. We can sit here and we can talk. And she kept saying things like, I'm just so stupid. I can't believe I would mess this up. I can't believe I can't get this stuff straight in my head. And I told her repeatedly, I was like, Grandma, I will come over there and kick your butt if you don't stop. I don't cuss with my grandma. So I will come over there and kick your butt if you don't stop, because no one gets to talk to my grandma that way, not even my grandma. And that's the kind of thing that I would encourage someone who was to come to me with concerns like that. I'd say, look, what are you doing self-talk internally? What are you doing? What are you saying to yourself in your head? And how can you change that a little bit to be like, all right, I'm going to give myself some grace and myself some space to handle things the way that I need to handle them. And in the case of my grandma's dementia, that's hard, right? That's hard to do because she's battling her own brain. But so is everyone else. Everyone else is battling their own brain, and